In 1971, a global financial earthquake rocked the world's superpower. America, the post-war titan, cut the dollar's last golden cord. The dollar, once gold-backed, was now just paper. Financial dread echoed globally. Bankers, economists, world leaders watched stunned. What desperate gamble would save its financial soul, avert collapsing global influence? The answer was in liquid gold from the desert, in oil. A secret deal, struck in desolate Arabian sands amidst geopolitical chaos, would reshape global power, forging an empire built on shrewd economic manipulation. This is the gripping story of the petrodollar. For decades since WFU's ashes, the US dollar ruled. It was king, backed by Earth's largest gold reserves. This was Bretton Woods, stability born from chaos, preventing economic depressions. Every dollar held by foreign nations was gold convertible, a chain of trust. But cracks formed. Decades of escalating wars, especially Vietnam, plus lavish spending and rising European Japanese economies, outpaced America's gold. Foreign powers, seeing the drain, cashed in dollars for physical gold. Fort Knox emptied. Fast. The symbol of American economic might vanishing. August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon, facing inevitable crisis, dropped a bombshell. The U.S. unilaterally abandoned the gold standard. No more dollar-to-gold convertibility. The Nixon Shock sent tremors worldwide. The dollar was now fiat currency, value decreed by government mandate, by faith alone. This was an unprecedented gamble. The world watched, aghast. Without gold's intrinsic value, what would give the dollar global legitimacy, demand, authority? America's global leadership hung by a thread. America's sharpest minds saw the existential stakes. A devalued dollar threatened the economy, geopolitics, and global influence. They needed a new anchor, a new, unassailable foundation for their currency. A commodity of universal, unyielding demand that every nation needed, had to acquire, regardless of origin. In the industrializing, energy-hungry 70s, only one fit: oil. Oil. It wasn't just a commodity, it was civilization's lifeblood, industry's engine, transportation's fuel, city's power. Every nation depended on it. The genius was clear. If the U.S. could ensure all global oil transactions were only in U.S. dollars, an artificial, powerful demand for the dollar would be baked into the global economy. This wasn't about a gold equivalent. It was about transforming a critical resource into a strategic economic weapon. Ruthless strategic necessity. But orchestrating this monumental maneuver needed a powerful partner, a nation with immense leverage over global oil. One country, one kingdom, held that strategic power, especially after the 1973 Arab-Israeli War and oil embargo showed Western economies' vulnerability: Saudi Arabia. In the early 70s, Saudi Arabia wasn't just a major player. It was the undisputed Goliath of global oil. It controlled roughly 25% of the world's proven oil reserves and wielded colossal OPEC influence. The ultimate swing producer, it could open or close the taps at will, impacting global prices and economies. For the U.S., Saudi cooperation wasn't an option. It was the only viable path to dollar dominance. Enter Henry Kissinger, enigmatic, shrewd Secretary of State. A real politic master, he knew geopolitics was brutal interests, not ideals. He recognized the Saudi linchpin. In 1974, he made highly secretive, high-stakes diplomatic missions to Riyadh. The urgent goal: forge a pact binding two vastly different nations' futures. This deal had to succeed. Negotiations were intense, protracted, secret. Both sides needed critical, non-negotiable outcomes. The U.S. needed the dollar's future, global standing, and financing for global ambitions. Saudi Arabia, a nascent nation in a treacherous region, needed existential security. External threats, Soviet influence, internal instability. The monarchy needed legitimacy. The covert deal was struck. A brilliant, cynical, mutually beneficial exchange of power for protection. 1. Saudi Arabia's unwavering pledge. For an ironclad American defense commitment, Saudi Arabia priced all its colossal oil sales exclusively in U.S. dollars, no other currencies. This forced every oil-importing nation to first acquire U.S. dollars to buy essential energy. 2. The petrodollar recycling mechanism. Saudi Arabia committed to reinvesting its massive dollar profits, petrodollars, directly into U.S. Treasury bonds and American assets. This crucial second half guaranteed a constant, gargantuan influx of capital back into the U.S. economy, financing national debt, keeping interest rates low. a self-perpetuating financial feedback loop. 3. America's ironclad guarantee. In return for this economic loyalty, the U.S. promised unwavering military protection, advanced weaponry, and critical intelligence to the Saudi monarchy. A literal shield against regional adversaries, a bulwark for the House of Saud. The secret handshake sealed an incredibly potent economic empire. Global demand for the U.S. dollar surged. Nations worldwide had to acquire vast U.S. dollars, first and foremost, just to buy essential oil. This created an artificial, robust global demand for U.S. currency. The dollar, once adrift, now had an anchor stronger than gold. The world's insatiable thirst for energy. A masterclass in statecraft. For decades, the Petrodollar System cemented unparalleled American financial hegemony. It bestowed a unique ability to run massive trade deficits and accrue colossal national debt without immediate consequences. Why? Because the world, by design, always needed dollars. Critically, it granted immense geopolitical leverage. Nations defying U.S. foreign policy faced threats of being cut off from the dollar-denominated global oil market, a potent financial weapon. A subtle, yet devastatingly effective tool of global influence. Quantitative impact of dollar hegemony. For decades, the Petrodollar System didn't just give America power. It granted an exorbitant privilege that translated directly into tangible, quantitative benefits. Think of it. 1. Unlimited spending and borrowing. The world's insatiable demand for dollars, driven by oil payments and trade, meant the U.S. could run massive current account deficits, buying more from the world than it sold, year after year, without typical currency collapse. By the early 2000s, U.S. current account deficits regularly topped $400 billion annually, peaking over $800 billion in 2006. Unimaginable for any other nation, without severe economic repercussions. The system let the U.S. consume more than it produced, with the world footing the bill. 1. Lower borrowing costs. That massive influx of petrodollars and other dollar holdings poured into U.S. Treasury bonds, driving down interest rates. The U.S. government could borrow trillions of dollars at significantly lower costs than if it relied on domestic savings. We're talking hundreds of billions saved in interest payments over decades, freeing up capital for domestic spending, military projection, or reducing citizens' tax burden. Every 1% off the national debt's interest rate saves tens of billions. 1. Dominance in global trade and finance. The numbers don't lie. Even today, over 80% of all international trade invoicing is done in U.S. dollars. More than 60% of global central bank foreign exchange reserves are U.S. dollars. Nations must accumulate dollars. An estimated 40% of global debt is dollar-denominated, making dollar strength crucial for many economies. Daily global foreign exchange markets see the dollar in nearly 90% of all transactions, trillions daily. This unparalleled liquidity solidifies its safe haven status. 1. Monetary policy flexibility. Because the world needs dollars, the U.S. Federal Reserve has unique freedom. It can print money during crises or stimulate its economy without hyperinflation or a run on its currency, effects that cripple smaller economies. This seigniorage, profit from issuing currency, is a continuous, invisible subsidy to the U.S. These are the concrete, quantitative advantages that built America's modern financial empire, projecting power and maintaining a living standard beyond its domestic economic realities. But every empire casts a brutal shadow. This system created profound global dollar dependency, leaving other economies vulnerable to U.S. policy shifts. It indirectly funded proxy wars, propped up autocratic regimes, and incentivized military interventions to secure oil-rich regions, vital to maintaining the system. The price of this unparalleled stability was often blood, intrigue, and suppressed sovereign aspirations. Today, after nearly half a century, cracks show. Nations like China and Russia, wary of aggressive U.S. financial dominance and dollar weaponization via sanctions, are actively pursuing de-dollarization. They forge bilateral trade in local currencies, develop alternative payment systems bypassing the dollar, and seek non-dollar energy deals. The unipolar financial world is fracturing. Even Saudi Arabia, the petrodollar's original, loyal cornerstone, cautiously explores non-dollar oil sales, especially with China. The global energy landscape shifts. Renewable energy, new oil producers outside OPEC, and a global desire for financial sovereignty chip away at the petrodollar's dominance. The game changes. The profound question looms. What if the petrodollar system falters, collapsing under its own strategic success and evolving global realities? A weakened dollar could unleash uncontrolled inflation in the US, crippling borrowing costs, and a seismic shift in global power. The financial empire, so brilliantly conceived on oil, faces its reckoning, ushering in a potentially tumultuous multipolar economic order where America's financial leverage is severely diminished. The petrodollar, a complex testament to American ingenuity, foresight, and ruthless strategic thinking in crisis. Born from desperation, it solidified an empire and reshaped the world, dictating capital and power for half a century. But as global power shifts, new economic blocs rise, and old alliances reevaluate. The silent, covert 1974 agreement faces its ultimate test. The future of global finance and international power hangs in the balance. Will the dollar reinvent its destiny, or is its oil-soaked era dramatically ending? This is Fortune and Ruin. If you found this autopsy of the rise of petrodollar interesting, subscribe to join us as we unearth more untold stories of the past.